told Norway's prime minister that you not winning the Nobel Peace Prize made you feel less obligated to think purely of peace.
Well, I lost a lot of respect for Norway. And I believe very strongly that Norway controls the Nobel Prize. But you have to understand, I settled 8 wars. I've had every one of those wars, every participant wrote, I didn't ask him to do it. They sent in strong they make recommendations for that. But I settled 8 wars. No president's probably ever settled 1 war. I don't know, think of it. I did 8. The reason I do it is because it's easy for me to do. And I didn't do it for a Nobel Prize. I did it because I'm saving a lot of lives. I'm trying to settle the final one. I'm trying to do Russia-Ukraine. And when Russia's ready, Ukraine's not. When Ukraine's ready, Russia's not. But they're losing 25,000 people a month on average. And I'm trying to get that one done. But no, I feel that Norway has tremendous control over who gets the Nobel Prize, despite what they say.
How far are you willing to go to acquire Greenland?
You'll find out.
Good morning, and here we go. All aboard on that train to Davos, Switzerland. President Trump heading to the World Economic Forum. He will be front and center, set to deliver a America First message while keeping a critical eye on Greenland. There's a ton to cover on this. Good morning, everybody. You know, sometimes Davos seems somewhat insignificant to a lot of us. This year, different deal.
Not so much.
I'm Bill Hammer. Welcome to Tuesday. How you doing?
I'm great. I'm Dana Perino, and this is America's Newsroom. This is also the 1 year since President Trump was inaugurated for his 2nd term, and he has dominated the news nationally and internationally 365 days. I'm assuming tomorrow he keeps it going. And he will deliver this keynote address there. It is expected to highlight America's economic priorities. That includes his push to bring down the cost of home ownership.
So at the same time, he will go all in on his goal of acquiring Greenland, stressing the strategic importance of the territory in his ongoing push.
What do you plan to say to European leaders in Davos when they push back on your Greenland plan?
Well, I don't think they're going to push back too much. Look, we have to have it. They have to have this done. They can't protect it. Denmark, they're wonderful people. And I know the leaders are very good people, but they don't even go there. And, you know, because a boat went there 500 years ago and then left, that doesn't give you title to property.
So we begin with Rich Edson. He's reporting live from the White House. It might also be the White House. All right. Ed, give us your, Rich, excuse me. Give us your take this morning.
And good morning, Dana. Well, President Trump will leave the White House later today for the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. The president says he is going to discuss with world leaders all that's going on with Greenland. The president has been posting about it overnight, these self-governing Danish territory. He says he spoke with the General Secretary of NATO, Mark Rutte, and that, quote, I expressed to everyone very plainly, Greenland is imperative for national and world security. There can be no going back. On that, everyone agrees. Over the weekend, the president texted Norway's prime minister, said since he was denied the Nobel Peace Prize, he no longer felt he had to think purely of peace. The president denies the Nobel Peace Prize influenced his thinking on Greenland.
No, I don't care about the Nobel Prize. They have a board, but it's controlled by Norway, and I don't care what Norway says. But I really don't care about that. What I care about is saving lives.
The president has threatened European countries with additional tariffs if they refuse to support him on acquiring Greenland. Denmark's government has said it's willing to work with the U.S. on reinforcing Greenland's security. The Europeans have said a fight to take territory from an allied nation could put the entire NATO alliance at risk. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, already in Davos, speaking to Maria Bartiromo, laid out the administration's argument.
I think the president is worried that if there were an incursion into Greenland, the U.S. would be called upon to defend Greenland. Greenland's becoming more and more attractive for foreign conquest, and he very strongly believes that it must be part of the United States to prevent a conflict rather than getting the U.S. engaged in ex post into a hot conflict.
The president has refused to say whether he would use force to take over Greenland. Dana?
Okay, Rich Edson. I got it right that time. I'm so sorry, Rich, and thank you for kicking us off on America's Newsroom. Tuesdays are my hardest day, but now it's underway. All right, Bill.
We're good now. Okay, how important is Greenland? Going to show you a number of maps here to give you a bit of a history lesson and also what the president's talking about, what the European powers are talking about. Remember, our show, America's Newsroom, almost 2 years ago, we went to We went well above the Arctic Circle into an area north of Alaska. Here's Greenland right off the coast of Canada. We were over here in the Beaufort Sea with the U.S. Navy. As you see on the map, Greenland's a lot closer to North America than it is to our European partners in NATO. Over here, the size of Greenland. Brazil is 3.2 million square miles. Massive country, but Greenland is the largest island in the world at 836,000 square miles. Relative to California, it's much larger, with California at 163,000 miles, if you're able to put that into your mind. Come over here. I'm just going to show you a few things here. I know there's a lot of moving parts on this map. Think about two things right now when I talk about this. This is Russia, right? Every red dot is a Russian Arctic base. Every green dot is a NATO Arctic base, primarily U.S. here, and a few with NATO and the U.S. in Greenland. The early warning system, it lines the northern part of Canada. Now, what the Russian submarines and the Russian Navy has done, and by the way, the Russians, they lead the world in icebreakers. They have nuclear-powered icebreakers, which means if they're at sea and they want to stay afloat and out on sea, they can do that because they're powered with nuclear power behind them. The United States is well behind on this effort, trying to catch up. Why would you need a nuclear-powered icebreaker? This is the Northwest Passage. That's what we use. It's tricky, right? But when it gets frozen when it gets frozen for most of the year and it thaws a little bit in July, a little bit more in August, and some in mid-September, you can transit through this area. But what the Russian submarines have been doing for quite some time, you see the gap noted here and the Bear Gap here? That goes between Greenland and Iceland. It goes between Iceland and the UK. And this is what the NATO powers are worried about with regard to Russia and the growing influence of China in the Arctic region. Here's another map for you, all right? Washington, D.C. to the capital city of Nuuk in Greenland, 2,000 miles. Moscow in Russia to the capital city of Greenland, 2,000 miles. Denmark somewhat closer at 1,800 miles, just to give you a sense of relativity. See all these lines on the map over here? If you were to get into a conflict with Russia and China, intercontinental ballistic missiles would not travel this way around the world, or even this way. The shortest distance between two lines, right? It's a straight line between two places, and Greenland sits between Moscow and Russia, perhaps Beijing and China, and this is what the president's been emphasizing. You need that area, he argues, in order to put your future space golden dome in Greenland to prevent the threat of Russia and eventually China, perhaps, down the road if you were to get into a conflict. So that's the argument he makes.
An explanation, and the maps were very, very helpful.
I appreciate that, to our team putting all that together.
Yeah.
And then, Dana, you get into the argument of natural resources and what's there. Remember the other day we said when Seward's Folly did the deal with Russia in 1870, they did not discover gold in Alaska until 20 years later.
Right.
So who knows what's in Greenland beneath that ice? 2/3 of that island lies beneath the Arctic Circle.
I thought that was an excellent explanation. Thank you for doing that.
You got it. Professor Hemmer is on call.
Great. Well,
obviously, Greenland is sort of the issue of the moment, to be sure. So a lot of attention there, but also a lot of attention on the economy and on Iran and on gas prices and all of that. So with that, we'll bring in special report anchor and executive editor Bret Baier, who has been watching this along with us. Bret, I think you made some news on Greenland. He suggested that he said it's all going to work out. And then he's basically said, when I get there, I think people will be surprised. Something will happen that will be good for everyone. So it sort of hints at maybe a plan that is emerging for Greenland. What was your takeaway from what we heard here, Bret?
Yeah, good afternoon, Martha. I think it's right to point out it's almost exactly a year after his inauguration as second-term president that he comes out, talks for an hour and 20 minutes, and then takes these questions, listing these accomplishments. As far as Greenland, the question that really struck everybody's ears, I think, was how far are you prepared to go to acquire Greenland? And he said, you'll find out. Right. Now, what that means is not we are invading Greenland with the U.S. military, but it does sound in some of his answers like there there is a plan to try to get a deal on the books. This obviously is right before he leaves for Davos, and he is going to confront all of these leaders that are confronting him around the world, including President Macron from France and UK Prime Minister Starmer. He called them all talk, no action. They get rough when I'm not around. When I am around, they treat me very nicely. He thinks that he can make a deal on the world stage, and it sounds like when it comes to Greenland, that's what he's aiming to do.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. You know, he relishes these moments, Brett. He relishes going to Davos and having everybody a little bit on edge about what he's going to say. I think that's exactly the beginning of his tactic for wanting to negotiate. That he did say that he felt that maybe his administration had not communicated well enough on the economy, that the economy is doing better than people think. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with that. When you talk to not only people inside the administration, but outside the administration, they do see these green sprouts of the economy that they think Q1, Q2 could really take off. I mean, if you're talking 6% growth as a possibility, that is astronomical. Now, there could be some bumps in the road, and one of them is this Greenland back and forth and what we saw in the markets today. But I think there's this inherent confidence that he's going to get it across the finish line. I thought it was interesting, Martha, that he started with Minnesota and said also that he didn't think the communication was good on Minnesota. And we're going to hear from Minnesota shortly and the DHS out there. But he went through this long list of criminals, murderers and rapists and, each picture. And he just took time. It took a lot of time going through that stack of papers saying each one of these people have been taken off the streets. I don't think he thinks that there's been enough focus on that as opposed to the images of ICE and what that means across the country.
Yeah, absolutely. Brett, thank you very much. I know you're going to hang with us or maybe come back in a little bit after we see this DHS news conference. So thank you for that.
Today, President Trump is traveling to the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, and his major push will be to acquire the island nation of Greenland. And it's set to dominate talks with world leaders. He calls the United States' control of the Arctic island, currently part of Denmark, imperative for national and world security. And some NATO allies are not on board with this. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. Greenland is a strategically critical location for the U.S. Of course, it sits in the middle of the arc known as the Great Circle of Distance, or the Great Circle Distance. That describes the shortest flight path between Russia and Washington, D.C. If Russia or China were to fire intercontinental ballistic missiles at the U.S., they would likely cross over Greenland. Most of Greenland's roughly 56,000 residents live in coastal towns in the southern part of the country, where the weather is still critically difficult, but a little bit more bearable. A few people live more remotely, and their lives are very different from the people who have structure and actually, quite frankly, salaries. The vast interior is largely uninhabited. The island also has a wealth of mostly untapped reserve of rare earth minerals, which could offer a critical counterweight to China and Russia. And of course, militarily, because of where it's situated. It would be good to have a bigger force there for the U.S. This map shows the location of Russian and NATO Arctic bases in the region. Russian ships and submarines headed south in the area pass through waters between Greenland, Iceland, and the UK and Norway. All of it in NATO territory, which provides vital defensive points for the alliance. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says acquiring Greenland now could save the U.S. from a future fight.
I think the president is worried that if there were an incursion into Greenland, the U.S. would be called upon to defend Greenland. Greenland's becoming more and more attractive for foreign conquest, and he very strongly believes that it must be part of the United States to prevent a conflict rather than getting the U.S. engaged in ex post into a hot conflict.
Former Army Special Operations Intelligence Analyst and drone expert Brett Velikovich is coming up in focus I'll start with senior national correspondent Rich Edson, kicking off our coverage from the White House. Rich.
Good morning, Harris. President Trump is scheduled to leave today for Davos, where they are already talking about the U.S. push to acquire Greenland. The president says he spoke with the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte about this and that, quote, I agreed to a meeting of the various parties in Davos, Switzerland, as I expressed to everyone very plainly, Greenland is imperative for national and world security. There can be no going back.
NATO's been warning Denmark for about 20 years now, longer than that, 25 years. They've been warning Denmark about the Russian threat. And it's not only Russia, it's also China. So we'll see what happens. But let's put it this way. It's going to be a very interesting Davos.
Denmark's leaders say they're willing to work with the U.S. on reinforcing Greenland's security and that they've sent more troops there to demonstrate they are serious about defending the island against any Russian or Chinese aggression. President Trump has threatened European countries with additional tariffs if they refuse to support him on this. The European Commission president says those tariffs would risk the trade deal she and the president agreed to last summer. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent advised European leaders to stay calm and not retaliate. France's president criticized the White House approach.
Competition from the United States of America with an endless accumulation of new tariffs that are fundamentally unacceptable, even more so when they are used as leverage against territorial sovereignty.
Macron's dealing with an eye issue there. Europeans have said a fight to take territory from an allied nation could put the entire NATO alliance at risk. The president did refuse to say whether the U.S. would use force to take over Greenland. Harris?
Thank you. Thank you, Rich. Appreciate the report. Get us started here. The president posted this before leaving for Davos. The United States is the most powerful nation on the globe. Much of the reason for this is a rebuilding of our military during my first term. We are the only power that can ensure peace throughout the world, and it is done, quite simply, through strength! Exclamation point. A new op-ed is arguing the U.S. must take Greenland, whatever the cost. And here's part of it. The White House is speaking loudly about Greenland, but volume should not be mistaken for madness. This isn't a sudden lapse into imperial fantasy. It is a power politics play dressed in modern language, but driven by old truths. The U.S. can either treat Greenland as a distant curiosity or as what it actually is, a forward position in a region that will define future power balances. Brett Velikovich, former Army Special Operations Intelligence Analyst and drone expert and Fox News contributor. Brett, talk to me about the military importance of Greenland for the U.S.
Well, Harris, first off, as Americans, we shouldn't apologize for defending our national interests. That goes not only for domestically along our borders, but globally, and especially when it comes to our security. Greenland isn't about real estate. It's about deterrence. It's about dominance of the Arctic gateway. And Trump rightfully understands that we need to secure that gateway before our adversaries lock it up. It's strategic defense. And as that ice starts to melt up there, Greenland becomes the high ground over everything from North Atlantic shipping lanes to missile trajectories, undersea cables, future energy routes. Russia and China already see it that way. And at a minimum, with all this controversial talk of Greenland, what our president has done is get our allies to understand the strategic importance of it, and that bodes well for American security in the long run. And let's be honest, none of this urgency to secure it existed before the U.S. started pressing the issue. The administration forced the conversation, they forced action, they forced allies to move faster, and that's actually proof that the administration has NATO doing what it hasn't done in decades, which is take real responsibility for strategic terrain. Greenland, it's not just some frozen water. It's a front line in great power competition with China and Russia. Right. And if the U.S. doesn't shape the security architecture there, China and Russia will.
Look, I want to mention this. It's those Diomedes Islands. You've got the little one that belongs to us and what's called the Big Diomede Island that's out in the middle of the Bering Strait. And why that's important. At one point, Russia and the U.S. are, about 55 miles apart? Like, we have to take these things seriously. And if the water were to stay frozen all year, which I don't know if it even does that anymore, you could literally walk into the United States at that point. So we want to be able to be first in anything that's happening in that part of the world, should there ever be any movement. That's my understanding of it. What's your take?
You're exactly right. In that whole area, it's become so pivotal for monitoring potential threats, missile defense, controlling critical maritime aerial approaches towards North America. We've maintained a military presence on Greenland for decades, mostly at a space base, which hosts advanced missile warning, space surveillance systems, which are critical and essential for early detection of threats on a global scale. So Greenland is really this perfect example of forward thinking from a defense strategy standpoint. We're not seeking conflict, but we're never going to outsource our security or apologize for protecting our people. And that goes into this importance also of rebuilding our military. It's about deterrence. It's not just about weapons, it's about credibility. And so the reason, frankly, that adversaries now are finally taking American red line serious is because we've got a strong military, which proven time and time again that it can execute. And we need to continue to project our military strength as a mechanism to prevent future wars. And I think understanding those islands up there and the significance of it is just part of that play.
Well, and the Bering Strait's not going anywhere. It's certainly not going to stay frozen the entire year, but it's something to keep our eye on, too, if it ever becomes crossable at times where literally Russia is that close. So strategically that way, but also what about the money? Like right now we have a strengthening economy here in the United States. We've got the cash if we needed to buy Greenland. We're very blessed in that. I asked my team to do this, to look at other acquisitions that we have made with this country historically, because I think this is important. In 1803, there was the Louisiana Purchase. Now, here's what's critical. The size of it, 828,000 square miles. That almost doubled what the Republic was at the time. The Mexican Cession in 1848 and the Alaska Purchase in 1867. Each of them smaller than what I just mentioned with Louisiana, both between 500 and 600,000 square miles. But look at Greenland, larger than any of them, 836,000 square miles, which would make it the largest acquisition in history. This would be gettable without use of the military. Experts are saying, like Scott Bessent, for instance, if we do this quickly. Your take?
Well, that would be the best case scenario if we could purchase it. Definitely. I mean, we need to project strength. If we can buy it, we absolutely should. That way, there's no military intervention. I think that wouldn't be the best scenario. So the fact is, if we can afford to buy it, we absolutely should, because it's critical for our national security in the long run.
So, Brett, why do other countries want to push against us doing this? Like, I get it with Denmark, but I don't get it with the rest of NATO. I mean, they have never paid their fair share until President Trump came along. Now they are, and it also requires a buy-in on something and being first in that part of the world strategically.
Yeah, well, that's the issue right now. I think our allies, all of a sudden see it as important, and it is important, and that's because the administration has forced a conversation. They forced the allies to actually take a look at this strategically, and so of course they're a bit upset about it right now. But the fact is, the administration has really pushed that, and in the long run, that only is going to be more successful and bode well for American security if everyone looks to protect this area from China and Russia and other threats.
Brent Velikovich, always great to have you in focus. Thank you.
What happens to the tariff threat to Greenland if the Supreme Court comes out and rules against you on the tariffs? And
well, I'll have to use something else. I mean, look,
are you willing to use force?
Take a look at the word license. Take a look at other things. I mean, we have other alternatives. But what we're doing now is the best, the strongest, the fastest, the easiest, the least complicated.
Sir, if you move ahead with the Greenland-related tariffs on Europe, you secured almost $1 trillion of commitments from them to invest in the United States. Does that go kaput out the window if that happens?
I doubt it. Look, they need that agreement very badly with us. They really do. They fought very hard to get it, so I doubt that. But we'll see what happens. We have a lot of meetings scheduled on Greenland. I'm leaving tonight, as you know, for Davos. And we have a lot of meetings scheduled on Greenland. And I think things are going to work out pretty well.
And I believe there is not the speaker, but we are getting ready for him to walk out any moment. This is not a president. This is the House Speaker, but it is historic. This has never happened before. How do you think this speech is going to be viewed by the British people? Is this going to be a big deal over there in the UK?
Sure, it is, and I think they're going to appreciate what he's trying to do. But as we were discussing earlier, he comes with this positive message about our shared history and values and alliance, and yet we have these real-world issues going on right now, such as President Trump claiming to take ownership of Greenland or put new tariffs on the UK just this past weekend, slapping additional tariffs on the UK. These are things that are going to irritate the British people considerably. And so there's this disconnect between the message that Speaker Johnson is bringing and the actions of the United States right now. And I think that's going to be the difficult tightrope for him to walk in the course of this visit.
Yeah, and we see the House Speaker sitting down, no doubt, about to be introduced to make that speech that we are all waiting to hear. You talk about a tightrope. How does he walk it?
Well, I think he stays positive. He can't possibly distance himself from any of President Trump's policies. But I think what he tries to do is put them in the context of President is a big personality. He's a tough negotiator. He likes to put out an extreme position. We need to keep working together to try to find a good resolution to these. I think that's the best that he can do.
I also love the fact that, again, when you think of Britain, you think of British Parliament. This is going to be not only our House Speaker, but a congressman from Louisiana. And there's something, I think, unique about that. I think there's something fun about that, for lack of a better word, that a Speaker of the House from a state like Louisiana, which is such a uniquely American state, combining the Creole, the French, the South, all in one, is going to be addressing British Parliament. Your quick thoughts on that while we await the House Speaker?
Yeah, I think this is great, to be honest. We have that famous Mark Twain story, a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court. So now we've got the Louisiana Creole.
Yeah, that's right. And we are celebrating America 250. Obviously, our two nations got off to a rocky start, but it is remarkable that they are willing to celebrate this with us and even invite the House Speaker to mark this moment.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You think about where we were. We were under British rule for many years. We were a colony. We fought our fight of independence. We had to fight a second time in the War of 1812. The British burned down the White House at that time. But we've come a long way since then, and it's a tribute to the shared civilization, shared language, shared history, and, of course, values, about freedom, about human rights, about democracy, about rule of law. These are things that really unite our people.
I'm glad you mentioned rule of law. Law's so important. As somebody who went to law school, so much of our legal jurisprudence comes from merry old England, and we learned so much from them that we applied to our current system here.
Yeah, and Kurt, one of the big news topics that people in the UK are talking about right now is this mega Chinese embassy that is set to be put in place in the UK. Talk to us about that and if there are any national security concerns there.
Well, sure there are, because this is a mega project, as has been described. It is a big embassy with a lot of big underground space, a lot of room for intelligence collection, a lot of room for broadcasting out of there. It is really remarkable that this was proposed and was on the verge of being approved by the British government, which has such a potential reach in the UK. Turned into a big scandal in the UK right now, and now they're trying to work through this. What do we actually approve? What do we do with China? They don't want to insult China, but they are now coming to terms with the fact that this is a potential real threat to them.
Yeah. If we've learned one thing from politicians, regardless of whether they're in the United States or across the pond, they are not punctual when they say something's going to begin at 30. We're currently at 36. And so as we try to get more insight here, Kurt, we want to keep you there. We'd like to bring in Hillary Fordwich. We always have Hillary on when we deal with matters across the pond. And Hillary, I'm going to ask you the same question that we asked Kurt just a moment ago. How big a deal is this speech over there in England? Keeping in mind, it is not a president. We have to acknowledge that. But this is the first time the U.S. Speaker of the House, which is a very important position here in the States, is addressing British Parliament.
Yes, and I think this is something that's actually going to work really well because he is so diplomatic, he is so articulate, and that's something that's really appreciated by the British people. And actually, I find it rather providential that at this time, obviously, when this was planned and all these trips are planned many months ago, we didn't know how fraught this actual moment would be. regarding the issues in Greenland and obviously many other issues with regard to the national security there, with the minerals there. So I think this is very providential.
House Speaker Mike Johnson, when he announced that he will be making this address, said, as our nation commemorates the 250th anniversary of American independence, I am honored and humbled by Speaker Hoyle's invitation to address Parliament. The U.S. and the U.K. have stood together as pillars of peace and security across generations. We forged this important friendship in the great wars of the 20th century, but the true source of our strength comes from our shared commitment to individual freedom, human dignity, and the rule of law, which together form the exceptional joint heritage of the English-speaking world. It is a remarkable friendship that our two nations have, and it's something that was on full display when President Trump visited the UK in September of last year. And there was also a great economic element to that moment, and continues to be ongoing with investments from U.S. companies into the UK and vice versa. Talk about the economic marriage of our two countries and the importance of that.
What's really important is how many Americans, well over 1 million Americans, actually are employed in the UK. And if you any single U.S. company where they say they're an international organization, and whether it be a law firm, they invariably.
All right, we're having a little trouble with Hillary's audio. We're going to take this moment to take a breath. We're going to take a break. And when we come back on the other side, your Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, will be addressing British Parliament. Keep it right here on Fox and Friends First. We'll be right back.
It's officially been a full year of President Trump driving the libs absolutely loco. And to celebrate, he annexed the White House briefing room for nearly 2 hours, holding reporters hostage while he read straight from a giant book of his own accomplishments.
Here's the book on accomplishments. And this is something, ooh, I'm glad my finger wasn't in that sucker. That could have done some damage, but you know what? I wouldn't have shown the pain. Look at this. These are all, each line is something that we did. Nobody did that before. And it's big stuff, too. Look, we have the hottest country in the world. I said, why is it the Gulf of Mexico? It should be the Gulf of America. I was going to call it the Gulf of Trump, but I thought that I would be killed if I did that. D.C. is now, you can walk right from here to a restaurant, right through the center of town. You can be with your child, with your loved one, with your lover. Deranged Jack Smith. He's a sick son of a. They gave me the worst of the worst. And here I am. I've never seen this room like this. Is this a celebration of the first year?
You know what we don't deserve? Him. Now, President Trump jets off to Davos, where he's expected to browbeat the bug-eating globalists over Greenland. But how far will he go?
How far are you willing to go to acquire Greenland?
You'll find out. I think that we will work something out where NATO is going to be very happy and where we're going to be very happy. But we need it for security purposes. We need it for national security and even world security. It's very important.
But Democrats say the Greenland gambit proves Trump has completely lost it.
He is a madman. He is insane. He's only thinking about himself. Everything you're hearing, and
you
whatever
really think
Marco
he's
Rubio is
insane?
saying, whatever J.D. Vance are saying, yes.
He's going to probably use military action. And when he does, Americans are going to die in battle.
It's time to stand tall and firm, have a backbone. I can't take this complicity. People rolling over. I should have brought a bunch of knee pads for all the world leaders. Donald Trump, he's a T-Rex. You mate with him or he devours you.
Wow, knee pads. All right. Jesse, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can barely see the staples.
I took off MLK Day, Greg.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And it's, well, we all know why.
For my people.
Yes, they are your people. So he went through his giant book of accomplishments. And that's only 1 year. But he has to do it because the media has ignored half of this stuff.
Right. And I saw MSNBC cut away when he started showing the mugshots of the bad hombres we're picking up in Minneapolis. We have to secure Greenland. It will happen. Dana is right. She's never been wrong in any of her predictions. The United States always secures our interests economically, militarily, either by force or purchase. Louisiana purchase, Alaska, the Philippines. We even got the Marshall Islands after World War II. You don't even know where they are, Greg.
Yeah.
We got the moon. I think we own it. And I know we own it. And when the world changes, we change. So globalism's dead. We have to protect our own supply lines. We have to protect ourselves from missiles coming in from China. And we're going to do it whether they like it or not. Denmark should take the offer.
Yes.
Denmark cannot defend or develop the island. And they're in violation of their NATO obligations because they are sworn to defend all of their territory. And they cannot defend it. They live under our security umbrella. It is a big, beautiful umbrella, Greg. Do they want to live under it or not? We're offering them $700 billion.
Yes, $1 billion per person.
$1 billion per person. The royal family in Denmark is dying to sell Denmark. Every European that we're going to grease with the $700 billion is dying to do this deal. It's like when you find out your great-grandmother has this amazing piece of real estate right on the coast, and some big fat developer comes over and makes an amazing offer, and you don't even go to the property. You've never even seen the estate, and you don't have enough money to even build on it. So someone comes here, slaps a check down, and you're going to say no. Once Besant and Lutnick and Rubio get into a room with all these guys and knock their heads together, we're getting Greenland.
Yeah, you know, Dana, I mean, and we're taking Denmark as is. Like, there's not even any staging at all. We're not asking for any improvements. We're just saying, we'll take it off your hands.
Well,
we'll do the
you
work.
went a step further. We're taking Denmark. We don't need Denmark.
Oh, I'm sorry, Greenland.
We just
The same thing, right? Okay, that's a good question that just came to me. Why does Denmark have dibs over Greenland? It's not even in their hemisphere. It's in ours. That Frisbee is on our roof.
Well, I actually did a little research on this. If you can go back to, like, I think it was in 1916 that the United States said, okay, we recognize Greenland belongs to Denmark.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you could say that those things don't matter, but territorially, I think that they have laid claim to it. But I also think President Trump could claim the win here already, and he probably is planning to do that. So, like, when McCaskill is there saying he's definitely going to use military power, like, from the comfort of your kitchen, like, that's not happening. I do believe that when they all get there tomorrow, he'll get in a room and he'll be like, you guys ready to deal? And they'll be ready to deal. We already know this is going to happen. They're not going to try to stand on their own. But they've already offered everything that he's basically wanted. The only thing is the issue of ownership. And how can he define ownership in a way that is win? I feel like President Trump has already won the issue, and he just needs to package it in a way that says, I'll take the win, thanks.
Yeah, like a leasehold or a freehold. I don't know what that's called, Kaylee. You know, the thing is, what did you think of Trump's performance? There's a lot of great lines in there with the little clip thing. He said he wouldn't show the pain. I thought that was nice. What did you make of it?
I think he's his own best messenger. On Minnesota, for instance, he gave acknowledgement to there being both sides that need to be looked at, considered. He, of course, supports ICE, but he has given a voice to that woman, which I think is very good. Not only that, on immigration, he said, I've looked at my team and I said, look, we got to get this under control. There are good people who are here. They came illegally. They're working on farms. They're a value to our society, and let's go after the criminals. So President Trump has a good gauge and a good steer, and I think we saw that today. On Greenland, though, I'm very skeptical that the ultimate goal to that point is to have a military takeover of Greenland and incorporate Greenland into the United States. Why? Greenland became a state. They get 2 Senate seats. Greenland is deeply, deeply leftist.
Really?
Socialist. So 2 socialist senators, you could add them to the United States Senate, at least 1 House seat, according to the Heritage Foundation. So you got another House socialist member. James Carville has told me they want to get rid of the filibuster, make D.C. a state. So add another 2 Democratic senators, add another 2 Democratic House seats. That's a political nightmare for Republicans.
And Puerto Rico would be like, excuse me.
Puerto Rico would be like, let us in too. So I think President Trump's end goal is something short of that. Maybe a freely associated state like the Marshall Islands, maybe a territory like Guam, less likely to happen. But I think he's got them in a position to deal. But I don't think the deal is going to be, let's add socialist senators to the United States Senate and lose it forevermore.
So, Harold, you know, you could talk about Greenland, but I was kind of impressed with Newsom's description of Trump as a T-Rex. That's really actually that's a compliment. You know, you either play along or you get eaten. I mean, that's the smartest thing Newsom's ever said.
See how President Trump thinks about that. Good to be with everybody again. I listened to the president today, and I was reminded Kayleigh, that he gave a speech, a nationally televised address, I think a few months ago, where he was able to have 15 minutes to list off some of the accomplishments. I had a slightly different take on his speech today. I think if I were him, I would have done this today. If I were around him, I would have advised him to do this, because he is seeing the snapshot of kind of where the country is thinking we are, and how voters, particularly voters who put him over the top in 2016 and obviously in 2024, not necessarily believing that their priorities are his priorities. We can talk about polls, but I think polls are only accurate for that very moment, and you should use them as an instruction manual. The thing I would take away if I were him from our polling and all the other polling that's out there is that he is focused on things that people aren't necessarily focused on in their own lives. That doesn't mean what he's focused on is unimportant, but it's not important to voters. And I think he did today a good job of trying to persuade the American people and even himself that what he's focused on is what's most important for the country and what is going to advance the country in the long term. Two, I think on the immigration thing, I think Karl Rove said it best on our network maybe a few days ago, and he's talking about Texas. I don't think Texas goes Democrat, but he said that Texas is certainly, you're seeing Hispanic voters move a little bit away from some of the Republicans, because he thinks that, this is Karl's words, he thinks that a lot of Texas Republicans, for that matter, Americans who are Republicans, are more forgiving or have some grace for immigrants who are here illegally, who are not violent, who paid their taxes, who are raising families and raising good families, even families
Trump
that
gave
are
voice to that today.
right. But I think that's where on the immigration thing, he's not faring as much as he wants. And finally, on Greenland, he could do everything he wants. Dana's right. He can do everything he wants economically and militarily there, because of a 1951 treaty that Harry Truman negotiated. Said, look, we'll partner with you to do whatever you want to make not only the island safe, but to make our hemisphere safe, and for that matter, NATO safe. And two, you can have access to all the natural resources. I think for the president, he wants to own it. He wants to be a landlord and not a tenant. And I'm just not convinced that people in Greenland are going to give up, in spite of notwithstanding the political dynamics that may happen if they become a state, two Democrats or whatever. I think the people in Greenland, they kind of like being what they are, whom they are. And just stripping them of their self-determination when they want to give us everything practically that we want, I think would be a mistake. And if you don't believe me, I think all you got to do is listen to what I think the president's going to face when he goes to Davos. I wish him the best, but based on what you're hearing already there, there's going to be some fireworks when he gets there.
Well, the question is, did Truman want a country that expands or shrinks? I don't know. Well, Alaska.
Very good. Can I add one other thing that has happened since Truman?
What?
Global warming.
Yes.
But that is also one of the reasons that this issue has accelerated, because if you care about the Arctic Circle and the blah, 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 the thing around the map.
Yes. Already lost interest.
Can I say one last? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Harold.
President Trump, I just wonder about his reaction, just to think about. President Trump on Truth Social today said that China and Russia are the boogeymen, when the real threat to the U.S. is the UN, NATO, and Islam. Now, I don't agree with that. And if you going into Europe in the conference, I think is too much of an elitist conference, but if you're going to go there to speak to the leaders there, it's going to be curious to see how they digest that.
He has an end game. That's why he published their text. They're on notice.
They'll fall in line, Harold.
Who's your boogeyman? Casey? Oh, Jesse?
Jesse.
Good afternoon, and live from Texas, this is the Will Cain Show. You've been listening to an update from top Department of Homeland Security officials from Minneapolis. Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino touting the apprehensions of the, quote, worst of the worst in Minnesota. Attorney General Pam Bondi is on the ground in Minneapolis now as the DOJ probes the anti-ICE protest at a St. Paul church and serving subpoenas to state leaders, including Governor Walz. Later this hour, I will speak with Border Czar Tom Homan. We're going to dive into the latest in Minneapolis and the accusations that ICE agents face from the left. Are they committing, in the words of their critics, atrocities? We'll ask Border Czar Tom Homan. But today we start here. Year one of President Trump's second term, it's in the books. And let's just say the pages are full, because whether or not you agree with what he's doing, it'd be hard to deny just how much he's doing.
Wow, that's a big crowd. It's a lot of people. I think it's like a record. So these are accomplishments. We have a lot of accomplishments. You know, I've never seen this room like this. Is this a celebration of the first year? Yes. Have you ever seen it? I've never seen this many. I hope we have a very good. I hope we have a very good structural floor. You know, this used to be a swimming pool. You're sitting over a swimming pool. I could see that happening. But we need a good structure here, don't we, huh?
The president making an appearance in the briefing room today to mark the occasion. We've seen a whole lot of President Trump over the year. 80 interviews, 228 executive orders in 1 year. It's a pace that makes Biden's first year look like a statistical error. And while Trump was taking a victory lap, protesters taking a hike at a rally to walk out on fascism in protest of his administration, featuring some greatest hits.
We want freedom, freedom. Donald Trump in D.C., we don't need him. Walk out on fascism. Walk out on that bullshit.
We will win. We will win. We will win.
Hard to argue any of them are in the majority when the approval averaged over his first year of his second term, 45%. You don't have to take my word for it. In fact, let's take a look back at some of the biggest accomplishments of the past year. And let's start, if we will, over at the economy. And when it comes to the economy and inflation, this is what the first year looks like compared to the first year of Joe Biden. The cumulative change in price is lower under President Trump. The administration, when it comes to overall inflation, grocery prices and gas prices, has lowered inflation. There's his now, of course, as well, infamous feud with Jerome Powell over interest rates. That was on full display this summer when Trump toured the renovations alongside with the Fed chair. And when it comes to investing in our future, well, there's his plan for $1,000 Trump accounts for babies, made possible largely by a donation from the Dell family. And of course, one of Trump's favorite words and policies, tariffs. The jury, of course, literally still out on the policy, or at least the justices, and we'll soon hear from the Supreme Court. Now, moving on to foreign affairs, we've seen the president take an assertive stance when it comes to the U.S. on the world stage, and it's paid off with peace deals like the Israel-Gaza war and the Armenian and Azerbaijan war, Syria and Israel, Thailand and Cambodia, Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, and India and Pakistan. And then there is assertive global posturing with wars like Russia and Ukraine. And we should note as well that we might add where progress has been made, and that is on Iranian strikes. Those Iranian strikes on their nuclear facilities made huge waves, as did the capture of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela and his proposed acquisition of Greenland, which he just spoke about in the last hour.
How far are you willing to go to acquire Greenland?
You'll find out.
We'll soon find out. Also, by the way, it's been an extremely consequential year when it comes to culture. Most notably, of course, ending DEI programs and preferencing. He kept men out of women's sports, cut radical spending with Doge, and flipped the food pyramid on its head. He took on artificial dyes in food as well. But maybe the most marked change from the previous administration, border security. And the numbers there, well, they're stunning. Zero catch and releases for the 8 straight months. 1.9 million illegal immigrants have voluntarily self-deported, and there's been 650,000 deportations. And here's why that matters, why all of this matters so much. Just one story. In 2024, an illegal immigrant from India caused a multi-car pileup while driving a commercial 18-wheeler in California with a CDL issued from, I'm sure you would have guessed, California. That crash critically injuring then 5-year-old Delilah Coleman, leaving her in a coma for 3 weeks and interfering with her ability to walk, talk, eat, or go to kindergarten. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy highlighting the story on X just yesterday, writing, "This beautiful girl, Delilah Coleman, is left with life-altering injuries after a criminal illegal immigrant caused a wreck while operating a truck he should never have had a license to drive. California's weak leadership is failing Americans like Delilah every day. My prayers are with her and her family." This driver He's just one of the many who have wreaked havoc on America's roadways, with many more occurring after the wreck that injured Delilah. Her family is calling out Governor Gavin Newsom for failed leadership.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.